I decided to do an open-top bus tour of Oxford and the university. As you can see, the bus itself is only actually half open-top, which is probably a really good thing because particularly at this time of year it gets a bit nippy when you're sitting up top. There are various options. I chose to do the £17 option, which I think is reasonable value for this tour, and there are 20 stops on the tour around the centre of Oxford and slightly outside. I joined the bus at the stop number 20 outside the Ashmolean Museum on Beaumont Street, and I actually went round this tour twice, once sitting at the front, which has a glassed-in area, so I apologise for the reflections, and once sitting outside towards the back so that I could represent this bus tour fairly to yourselves. And I've compiled both tours into one trip to try and get the best views that I can. Joining the bus at stop 20 is probably not the best place to start, as we go through the modern city and we stop frequently at the railway station, the bus station and so on. And I've cut almost all of that out. I think the best place to start this tour would be either stops 5, 6 or 7, and then you go round to either 14 or possibly 20, and in doing so you cut out what I would consider to be the modern dross and you see the heart of the city and the university itself. Now, anyone who's watched my Visit Windsor video knows that I love a Motte and Bailey castle, and here we see the motte, that's all that's left of the castle, of Oxford, which was built in 1087 by William I, William the Conqueror. The establishment of this castle really established the town of Oxford, as prior to this there had not been much here other than marshland around the River Thames, and the castle itself was also used as a prison. We now come to the beautiful Westgate shopping centre, heart of Oxford itself, and to be honest, the most interesting thing about Westgate is its name, Westgate, because Oxford itself used to be surrounded by a medieval wall with north, south, east and west gates, and Oxford and Oxford University form a medieval town. It's at this point on the tour we begin to see what this bus tour is all about. The spires, medieval buildings and colleges of Oxford University itself. Here we see the College of Christ Church and the Diocese Cathedral Christ Church, the Cathedral of Oxford City and the Diocese of Oxford. And the whole of the centre of Oxford is like this. Christ Church itself as a college was established in 1546 by Henry VIII, and it is unique in the university for housing the cathedral itself, and also one of the richest colleges in the university, with endowments worth about £550 million. It's also home to 661 students at the moment. Oxford University itself is the oldest English-speaking university in the world. It was really established by Henry II in about 1172, when he was concerned that most English scholars were going across to Paris in France to study, and he banned this. And at the time, Henry had a palace at the end of Beaumont Street, where we started, in Oxford, and he commanded that the scholars stop going to France and set up shop, if you like, in Oxford itself. And this was the beginnings of Oxford University, although there is evidence that there was learning in the churches around the castle prior to this date. In 1209, with the town of Oxford growing rapidly as the university staff and student body increased, some of the townsfolk took exception to this, and there were significant deadly riots which occurred during the year of 1209 in Oxford. To escape these riots with their lives, some of the Oxford academics decided that they had to leave the town, and they went cross-country to the northeast to a little village called Cambridge, and it was here that they settled down and established a new university with the same college structure that now exists in Oxford. This new academic institution is obviously now known as Cambridge University, and together with Oxford, they form part of the Oxbridge University set. Oxford and Cambridge universities are two of the most prestigious universities in the world to study at. As I mentioned, Oxford University is based on a college structure. There are 39 Oxford colleges, the newest of these being Reuben College, established only in 2019. And in order for a college to be established at Oxford, effectively permission has to be given by the ruling monarch. So Reuben College gained permission from Queen Elizabeth II to establish as a college in Oxford. All students of Oxford University belong to a specific college, and the colleges act autonomously from the university itself. They are financially and academically independent, but they do specialise into particular types of academia, and together as a collective they supply the student body for the university itself. The very original colleges of Oxford were founded in the 12th century, and they were really religious institutions, often themselves actually based physically within churches within Oxford. So, for example, William of Durham, who was Bishop of Durham, in 1249 endowed University College, and John Balliol, father of the future King of the Scots, endowed Balliol College. Another founder, William de Merton, a Lord Chancellor of England and Bishop of Rochester, founded Merton College. And during the 12th and 13th century, the colleges which were founded were almost rival religious institutions within Oxford itself. The university colleges remained institutions defined and controlled by the church and not the state and not the king until really the 1500s, when Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries and took power from the Catholic Church. In 1334, some disillusioned academics from Oxford decided to establish a new university at Stamford in Lincolnshire, another important religious site at the time. The academics remaining at Oxford were hugely concerned about this potential competitor and petitioned the king, Edward III, to prevent this happening. Edward agreed and banned the establishment of any new university in England, and indeed this law survived until 1820, which gave Cambridge and Oxford a unique duopoly in England. It was only in 1820 that this law was repealed and additional new universities could be established in England itself. This created a unique situation for Oxford and Cambridge that was unique across Western Europe and gave them enormous power to grow as powerful institutions in the Kingdom of England. This law resulted in huge sums of medieval money and academic capability flowing into Oxford when it may have gone to other universities had they been allowed to be established. So, for example, if you were a bishop in the 13th or 14th centuries and you wanted to create an academic institution, which is what they all wanted to do, you had to do so at Oxford or Cambridge. In 1380, the Bishop of Durham, Thomas Hatfield, wished to establish a new university, but was told he could only do so at Oxford. And so he established what was at the time known as Durham College, Oxford. Subsequently, its name was changed by Henry VIII in the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1500s, and is now known as a little-known college called Trinity College, Oxford. There is now a University of Durham itself, based on the college system exactly as Cambridge and Oxford, and considered really part of the Oxbridge system. But it was only established in 1832, and as I mentioned earlier, it couldn't be established earlier because until 1820, the law against the establishment of other universities in England was not repealed. If you go to Durham and you visit the magnificent cathedral there, Bill Bryson referred to it as the greatest building in all of England, then you can actually see the tomb of Thomas Hatfield. I also have a video on Durham, the city and the university itself, and I do visit the cathedral in some detail, and you can see the splendid tomb of Thomas Hatfield in that video if you wish. As we turn right, we drive along the wall of Magdalen College, Oxford, which was founded originally in 1458 by William of Waynflete, who was Bishop of Winchester and Lord Chancellor of England, and it was obviously named after St Mary Magdalene. Magdalen College was originally founded on a different site in Oxford, but between 1470 and 1480 they took over the site of St John the Baptist's Hospital, running alongside the River Cherwell, which we saw a few minutes ago. The Cherwell itself is the largest tributary into the River Thames and joins the Thames at Oxford. The original layout and buildings we see were constructed during this move in 1470 to 1480. In the late 15th century, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, after her father Henry VIII had broken the power of the Catholic Church in England, the university changed and flourished. Prior to this time, it had been a medieval religious education based around factions of the church and religious learnings. Now the university entered the Renaissance period with a Renaissance style of education and looked at the natural world and fact and the beginnings of science as the foundation of the education that existed in Oxford. In 1636, William Laud, the Chancellor of the University and Archbishop of Canterbury, defined the statutes on which the university still operates today. Some of them were changed in the 19th century, but many of them are still operated as we speak. He was also responsible for the granting of a charter to secure privileges for the printing of books at the university, and this became the world-famous Oxford University Press as we know it today. Laud also made significant contributions to the newly established Bodleian Library. The Bodleian Library in its current form was established in 1602 and to this day remains the second most important library in the United Kingdom after the British Library. It holds 13 million books and has a further 5 kilometres of books added to its shelves every year. It is law in the UK that any book published in the UK must be given as a free copy to the Bodleian to be held alongside those in the British Library. Whilst, as you can see, this bus tour is fantastic in the most part and allows you to see a lot of Oxford, it doesn't allow you to see the medieval heart of Oxford. This medieval area is now mostly pedestrianised and was originally contained within the city walls of Oxford. It contains the majority of the Bodleian Library, although we do see a little bit of it on this tour, and also other famous buildings such as the Radcliffe Camera. I did a walking tour of this area and we'll do another separate video on it, but I would highly recommend combining the bus tour with a walking tour. We now turn on to Broad Street, which was just north of the medieval city wall. And here we see the Sheldonian Theatre, the old Ashmolean building, and also the Clarendon building. On this street, we also have the world famous colleges, Balliol College, Trinity College, and Exeter College. So Broad Street is really the heart of the city. Here we see the amazing buildings and quad of Trinity College, Oxford, as I mentioned previously, founded by Thomas Hatfield, Bishop of Durham, and originally called Durham College until the Reformation, and dating back to 1380. At the end of Broad Street, as we now look at it, there used to be a prison, and Thomas Cranmer, who was Archbishop of Canterbury, was famously burnt at the stake at the end of Broad Street at a point marked on the ground in 1556 by Henry VIII as a religious martyr to the Reformation. As we turn back up Broad Street to avoid the pedestrianised medieval area, we get a great view of the Sheldonian Theatre here, which was built and designed by Sir Christopher Wren in 1664. It was designed to be used as a ceremonial building in Oxford and is still used to this day for graduation ceremonies. Wren himself was part of a brilliant group of scientists in Oxford in the 1650s, and they formed a club called the Oxford Philosophical Club, which included the famous scientists Robert Boyle and Robert Hooke. This club met regularly in Oxford and ultimately spawned the world-famous Royal Society based in London. The bus tour then takes us out to the north of Oxford, past grand Victorian houses built for the academics in the late 19th century, and then past the Radcliffe Observatory. This observatory was built in 1772 and operated as an observatory to view the stars and the galaxies from 1773 until 1934. It's housed on the Green Templeton College site. We come back into Oxford along the street of St Giles, past, as I mentioned, Green Templeton College, but also Somerville College, St Benet's College and St John's College. At the end of St Giles, we pass the Martyrs' Monument and then see in front of us the Church of St Giles, and to the left is Balliol College, one of the oldest colleges in Oxford. Balliol College was founded in 1263 and was one of the original colleges in Oxford. It was founded by John Le Balliol, a rich landowner from Durham who had had a land dispute with the Bishop of Durham, which he'd lost. As a punishment, the bishop had him whipped in front of Durham Cathedral, but he was also required to make a charitable donation or penance, and his charitable donation was to the University of Oxford, where he established Balliol College. The Martyrs' Monument that we see here by the Church of St Giles was built at a rather later date, being constructed in 1838, and it commemorates the burning of the religious martyrs during the time of Henry VIII and Mary I, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, in 1556. We now turn left back onto Beaumont Street and past the Ashmolean Museum to where we started this tour. I hope you found this video useful and enjoyed. Please watch some of my other videos, and I thank you.